bare-knuckled faith, welcoming home the disowned self and recovering from a bipolar world and religion. This is episode 1, Tear Gas. The preacher said, "There's a Palestinian West Bank jeweler who makes earrings and necklaces forged from the scrap metal of used tear gas canisters." April Stace, that was the preacher, used that image on the first Sunday of Advent as a kind of a shiv to stab us with certain recognition about metamorphosis. It worked, at least it did for me. You see, I've been trying to reimagine the alchemy of good and evil, right and wrong, hope and hopelessness, and forging it into a different kind of alloy to strengthen the soul. In part because, frankly, all that good and evil duality that we get fed so much of, well, it just makes us brittle. But the other reason is that I actually enrolled in a 6-week seminar on the Jungian notion of the human shadow, both personal and collective shadows. Now, doesn't that sound like more fun than human beings ought to be allowed to have? Well, this is a 3-part series about this dance between the shadow and the light that lives within us and among us and all around us all of the time. The season of Advent is an apt time to be considering the interplay between what hides in our shadow and what appears as our persona in the light. My image of Advent, I don't know about yours, is of a lightning storm lashing the earth with winds and torrential rain and constant explosions of electricity clawing across the darkened sky. We know that at the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and sweet silver song of the lark, according to the lyrics of Don't Walk Alone, by which I mean Christmas. But first, we must endure and traverse electrical storms with their clashes of light and darkened figures and shadows appearing suddenly only to disappear again in the retreat of the light. Now, the biblical themes of Advent are harsh like that, pointing toward a fearsome and grievousness, even on the front steps of Christmas. So, I hope you will please join me for these sessions in which to consider not only our own personal shadow side, but also our collective shadow as a people, as a nation. Even more than that, though, I want to think about good and evil in new ways. Indeed, to consider God and us in new ways. In fact, I'm going to make the case for a wholeness that includes both good and evil rather than the age-old bipolar clash as if they are not related at all. Along the way, I will be offering different definitions, modified theological ideas, and challenges for us to widen the field of our own perspective. Besides some biblical texts and a poem or two, I will lean heavily on an anthology of articles by social scientists, thinkers, and professionals in the field of psychology, writing about Carl Jung and others. It is entitled Meeting the Shadow, the Hidden Power, the Dark Side of Human Nature. It's by Connie Zweig and Jeremiah Abrams. But appropriately, I want to begin with Jesus. Jesus said, the rain falls on the good guys and the bad guys alike, and the sun rises on both of them too. That's Matthew 5:45. Which then makes me think about an insight from an even more ancient prophet, Isaiah, who, speaking poetry from the lips of God, wrote, I made the light and darkness. I made the light and darkness. I bring peace, and I cause troubles. I, God, do all these things. That's Isaiah 45:7. God does all these things. We need to be woke. Please, more awakening, please. We need to see more of what there is to see. Increase our awareness instead of shutting it off when shutting off what we dislike or fear or find repulsive. More light, please, so that our awareness grows, so that our consciousness increases, and we recognize the parts of ourselves and of one another we have disowned. So please let us be woke, and more woke after that. It will be better for everyone if we are. What's happening now in this country with Trump and those who cheer him on and do his bidding was a long time in coming. Indeed, it may even have been required to happen if we are ever going to see and employ more of the better angels of our natures. So let's not waste all this suffering that has arrived with it and learn what we need to learn. And here's what I mean. Change, metamorphosis, from tear gas canister to jewelry, requires rigorous honesty and recognition of our darker natures. Any of my compatriots out there in recovery, any kind of recovery really, will recognize this from the 12 steps. And even if you never needed a 12-step recovery program, I'm sure you can identify with the wisdom of some of those most famous 12 steps. Here are a few of them that relate especially to this alchemy of good and evil. Once a person has admitted powerless over alcohol or any addiction, and come to believe there is a power greater than the self that offers the hope of restoration, then it is time to make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Then admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Then, among other things, make a literal list of all the persons we have harmed and become willing to make amends to all of them. And then make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And continue to take personal inventory. And when we are wrong, promptly admit it. So you'll see in all of that there is this tricky and frankly rugged self-honesty that is part of the recovery process. This is one of my favorite quotes from AA's big book. It comes from the preamble to most meetings. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. To quote it at length, those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. You and I know the wisdom and the truth of this deep in our bones. Change, our change, requires rigorous self-honesty. In the Episcopal Church, we have both a general confession and a personal individualized confession. And the promise of the confession is that if we engage in it honestly with a fullness of integrity, that we can eventually be released from that which is haunting us. So, thanks to the curtain gluttony of racism, we can see and we can recognize who we are as a nation and name it out loud. We can read the explicit racism articulated on Trump's social media posts, in his hiring and firing and in his public policies. And through it, we can recognize our own racism. We see and recognize the MAGA attempts to have erasure of America's shameful history of slavery and our subsequent institutionalizing of violent bigotry. But through that, we can recognize our own. We see and recognize the rage of xenophobia with this latent white supremacy. We witness the anti-immigrant attacks by masked ICE agents and other law enforcement personnel in their deployment to expel those not born here. We can recognize our own fears and suspicions. We see and recognize the gluttony, pure gluttony, of Trump and his billionaire colleagues licking up as many tax breaks and benefits as they can. Through them, we can begin to catalog our own greed. We see and recognize the animosity directed at the poor, the bitter scorn vomited on them as if they were a disease. In those puddles of our projectiles, we see the reflections of our own classism mirror. We see and recognize the haughty ownership of the world that we have imagined, bombing and invading and replacing people and governments across the globe. Even our friends are abused, threatened, and pushed around with, "Oh, what have you done with me lately?" refrain. In our international abuse, we see the wavering shadows of our own arrogance. We see and recognize the hoarding of resources by the rich that is stolen from everyone down ladder on the income scale. Up, 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 the resources are pushed as if squeezed through a toothpaste tube. Meanwhile, we pinch it off from those below. And in those pinched places between have and have not, we can experience our own hoarding natures. And what we understand from all of this is that it is all coming from America's shadow, our shadow, our shadows. It all rises from the disowned parts of ourselves. We knew in our uneasiness it was there within us, but we hid and denied and restricted it to places behind the curtain of our consciousness. We talked instead about how great America is and how uniquely good America is and how unsparingly fair and just America is. Meanwhile, because we were not truly awake, or in our dishonesty refused to be conscious of what seethed in our national unconscious rather, all that stuff behind the curtain boiled over, and then it took over. It has all happened before, in countries all over the world. Now it's happened here, among us. In a powerful column from the New York Times published on November 27, 2025, Joachim Helbeck wrote about, quote, "The lesson we teach school children about the Holocaust is wrong." I'm going to quote from it extensively. "First, they came for the Jews," Helbeck wrote. Many Americans remember that line as the beginning of a confession offered in 1946 by Martin Niemöller and taught to school children ever since. First they came for the Jews, then they came for the communists and the trade unionists. When they finally came for him, he said, there was no one left to speak for me. Now the Times article continues, "It is simple and steady progression. It is a powerful illustration of the consequences of apathy, but it is a distortion. In Niemöller's original version, the Nazis first came for the communists, as indeed they did. The distinction is more than a historical detail. It's a key to how a ruthlessly effective movement succeeded. The Nazis vilified Jews not just as a race, but as the supposed masterminds of communism or Judeo-Bolshevism, a twin enemy that was external and internal all at once. The Nazis cast their violence as preemptive self-defense." Then the columnist Helbeck brings home the point. That's the authoritarian playbook. Promise safety through vigilance, unity through fear. Describe aggression as preservation. Senator Joseph McCarthy did it when he turned the Cold War into a hunt for invisible enemies at home. Vladimir Putin does it when he brands dissenters as foreign agents. Donald Trump does it when he says that America is under attack from within and immigrants are poison in the nation's blood. Now wait just a minute. I can hear the objections of my anti-MAGA friends and partisans. It isn't us. We're not part of this disgusting racism. Don't blame us for this. We fought at the ballot box. But just stop and take a deep breath. I want to talk about how this works. So next time, we will talk specifically about the shadow and begin to consider the recovery. So in advance of the next installment of this series, I will leave you with this poem. It's from my most recent book, Last Will and Testament, published by Unsolicited Press. It's available, by the way, from the publisher and any other online bookstore, or better yet, ask your local independent bookstore to order it for you. This is from a section of the book entitled Dreams. It includes several poems along with an essay and a short story, and each one relates specifically to the unconscious or our disowned self. This poem is entitled The Wounded Animal Speaks. My chest heaves with the swelling until it hurts. The red meat of muscle pushed outward to the ends of its sinuous rope. Then, violently, the plunger of collapsing lungs sucks the chest cavity dry, every molecule of oxygen exhausted out. A new river of air surges, an unrelenting torrent flooding the cavern, burning the throat, lungs afire, muscles inflamed. Running, running, running without ever moving. My heart blisters from swallowed blood, bubbling through arteries engorged by too much running. Chased by no one, fleeing in fear, the hot breath of something moist upon my neck. I have been running forever. Today it stops. Now. The wounded animal emits a crackling high whine, then harbors a low, barely audible growl. It squats in the dark shadows of my brain. Its haunches rounded down, tail curled underneath wet legs, fur frayed, greasy, and streaked. An exposed wound, pinned like a rose on a caved-in shoulder, shines, the skin peeled in slices, opening a bloom of glistering red, opening a bloom of glistening red, with a fat worm of organ hanging from it. Those yellow eyes glow in that darkened corner under crazed light, flashing panic or assault. No more running from it. Today, live or die, I stop. The wounded animal inside and me will meet. As always, thank you for being here, and may peace be with you.